Hey, and welcome. It is, what is today? August the 21st, 2024. We are deep, deep, deep into the year, deep enough that we're starting to think about next year and how do we get through the end of this year, finish strong, and so we're set up for a really strong 2025. I'm shocked that I'm saying that. Makes no sense to me. It's not possible that it's already that late. And as we were talking in the green room, by the way, if you don't know, Labor Day is in like 10 days. So get ready. So summer's almost officially over, which is quite unfortunate. So again, good morning. My name is Gary Dehart, and I am the publisher of Insightful Accountant. And we want to say thank you for just taking some time out this morning to attend this webinar, Getting Your Firm Ready for Tax Season with Will Hill and Julie Smith. I have just a couple of things I want to cover before I turn it over to them. And I just want to make sure that everyone on here is aware of our premium content program that we kicked off, and it's called Be Insightful. I'll drop the chat or a link in the chat to our Be Insightful program, but it's basically a 12-month program. We have 9 training tracks. I'm not going to bore you with all those details. Take a look at the website. Pretty inexpensive for the year, roughly about 36 to 40 CPE credit hours that you could earn through that program, as well as some other premium content offerings that'll be only available to members. I lost my cheat sheet that had all my notes on it, so let me bear with me 1 second here. You can't close a window and then, or else everything just goes away. Well, you know what? My loss is your gain. I lost that, so I'm going to go ahead and go off and turn this over to Will and Julie. There will be a couple of other links that I'm going to drop down into the chat. So look at those, and I'll have a description of what those are when I drop them in the chat. So again, thank you all. Will, Julie, thank you so much for being here, for taking about 30 minutes out of your day to help people get prepped for year end and next year.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. Julie, good to see you again. How are you?
Yeah, you too. How's back to school going? Are
You
you there
know,
yet?
we're we're slowly easing in. Even though I live down in Tennessee now, I still kind of have the mindset of Labor Day equals when you should start school from when I used to live in Michigan. So since we homeschool the kids, we kind of set our pace. We're doing a little bit this week, a little more next week, and then we'll kick in after Labor Day to our full routines. So
Hey, I love a good routine. So, I think it's really important today that we talk about, we're in extension season essentially, right? So kids are back to school, at least for me, we're back to that routine, that schedule. So why not, deep dive into your firm and what that could mean. And so I think extension season is a great opportunity to either, hey, this went wrong in tax season. Let's try this in extension season. Let's work out the kinks and let's move forward and pivot for the rest of the tax year and start setting those expectations. So it's funny when we were doing this PowerPoint, it's like tax season, like no one wants to really hear about that, right? We don't even want to start to
yeah,
think that there's like
yeah,
another one looming in here, right? I mean, at least I don't want to even start thinking about taxes, whether it's personal or, for the firm. So that's really what I wanted to stress it is if we could start now, we're going to eliminate some stress. We're going to improve, a lot of things inside of your firm, processes, people, clients, all those things. So I really can't wait to deep dive into that. So,
yeah.
Will, can you reintroduce yourself?
I'm Will. Just to show that I'm the ugliest one in my family. There's my family, and love working with CPA firms. There you go.
Love it. I'm Julie. Those are my two pretty girls back in school. And again, we're just having fun really getting back into the groove, I think, for the CPA firm here, as well as all the other opportunities out there looming. So I really, for some reason, enjoy working with accountants and CPA firms too, Will. I don't know what it is. So first up is assess and distribute workload. Something that we just enacted here in our firm is something called draft day. Have you ever heard of that or done anything like that in a firm, Will?
Um, Only when it also involves fantasy football,
Well, that's
Brittany.
what I was gonna laugh and
So
say. We're all picking fantasy football teams this time of the year, right? But for us, it's really looking at client load, and it's really looking at clients in particular, and are they the right fit for maybe their accountant that they're assigned to or the team that they're assigned to? Would you prefer to, let someone else draft that person, or maybe potentially make a trade on draft day because maybe it just isn't the right fit? And so something that we are really digging deep down into, and draft day happens today, so it's a little stressful here in our firm as people are trying to make trades and back end deals and things like that. But um, is to really be able to assess that client load. And that kind of starts with, how are you keeping track of hours? How are you keeping track of the client work? Has someone added an LLC this year? The new BOI reporting. What is your firm doing on that? What has changed over the course of the last 8 months inside your firm with clients and workload that you just may need to take a big picture look at, and then drill down into? Because you could have had several big clients leave this year and didn't realize that you have an account that's freed up 20 hours, a month worth of work because they've left, and maybe you just haven't been able to, give them more work. So how do we, provide value and get that value back as the firm? So I really think right now is a great time to be reassessing, one, the client
yeah.
workload, and two, the employee workload, but also making sure as you go into this tax season, extension season, that the right people in the right places. We talk about that all the time, Will.
Yeah, we do. And I think this concept of kind of assessing where we're at as opposed to just saying we're going to plow forward with where we were last year and figure it out as we go just leads to more stress later. And so my question to those of you going, ooh, that sounds stressful. I don't want to, even if we put this off until October 16th, I don't want to do that then. Well, great. You're going to do it in February. Does that sound better or worse? Right. So, um, just being honest and saying, where are we now? We cannot make intelligent change choices about the future if we don't have a truthful reflection of what today looks like and what our current reality is.
Well, and I think it'll, beyond that, Will, I think it gives, we stress this a lot, but this is just another area, is a transparent conversation with your team. Because there's that client that just is stressing an individual out for whatever reason. Again, maybe it's not the right personality fit. Maybe they're just asking too much and we need to reassess those expectations and boundaries. But it at least, doing this now starts the conversation. So for us, as we go through extension season, we're transitioning the relationship if it needs to be transitioned, but we're also assessing and saying, hey, if anyone feels overworked right now, or like we're behind, we're assessing, where's each client at. I can identify the people that have the bandwidth that we can make that a lot easier. And we can balance that out with having that data to be able to have those conversations. So I think that, again, is just really helpful, but it also is going to provide value to your team, which is what they're looking for at this point in time, right?
Yeah,
And, I had
absolutely.
consider hiring interns. I think now is the greatest time to start that hiring. Everyone's back to college, right? Everyone's reassessing their life and what they want out of it. And it's the perfect time to maybe get an intern in and start just that training and getting them hit the ground running. Because if you start now, they're going to be able to provide value, not only, I think, in extension season, maybe on a lower level, but they're going to be able to understand how your firm works, what that process and workflow looks like. So come tax season, you can really rely on them, and they can maybe, help with some of that burden of tax season.
Yeah.
So as much as we start thinking about hiring or thinking about what are we going to do in tax season after October 16th, or maybe some of you even wait till December, now's really the right time to really start thinking through those hires and what that looks like.
Yeah. And remember that if you're going to bring an intern in, you don't have to bring them in at the full intern hours that you're planning on later, right? So, hey, come in, start at 4 hours a week, whatever it is. Maybe that's a little bit too light. Just depends on some of your needs, but let them ease in, get comfortable, and like you mentioned, put that learning curve when there's a little bit less pressure, and then we're going to be able to maximize the return come January, February. So
Yeah, absolutely. Technology, I know we all love it and hate it all in the same thing. But for us, when talk technology, it's really looking at what worked in tax season. What do we want to change? Can we make those changes for extension season to get those kinks out? And how do we, get those implemented and off the ground? Because we went through tax season, we know what that list is in May. Maybe we've started to do it, but right now is the time to make sure that we are implementing those changes so that extension season's a lot easier to say, ooh, that doesn't work. We're going to have to pivot real quick. What you didn't like last year, even if it's just the packet that the clients get, right? Or maybe it's how they get it electronically. Maybe there were some, whatever it is, how things change and what the client needs changed. It's really sometimes hard to predict that before tax season, but now is the time to make sure we have that up to date, because if you update it in your software today, it will, when you pro forma, you move it all over, makes it a lot easier come January when you're kind of up against the wall.
I would also say this as well is it is time to declutter. So a lot of times as we look at, hey, what are we going to add? What are we going to do differently? We forget to remove, right? So if there's something that's not being done anymore, we need to remove it. And that includes, I'm looking at your list of tech to make sure it's up to date, right? Workflow software. If we have a client that we get through 10, 15 and they never came back, please mark them as inactive, remove them, get rid of the visual clutter. You cannot plan effectively or communicate well if there's a lot of clutter. If you've changed your steps, you've added a couple steps, gotten rid of one. Oh, too often I've seen, oh, we added the new stuff in, but we hesitate to pull the old stuff away. And all we're doing is creating confusion. That applies to the communications you're sending to the clients. Look through and say, hey, what else do I need them to send us this year? Also, what do I not need them to do any longer? I want to remove those elements, keep things as clean as we can. So I just want to emphasize the declutter part of this conversation, Julie.
Well, and I think also to that point right now is renewal season. So really taking a look at like, okay, did you use your e-signature package, or what states did you, if you have to add states in your tax software, what is the break even point? Are you doing what is the most, monetarily efficient for the firm? And really looking at that portals, if you use some sort of portal system, what does that look like? And have you, decluttered those? I think sometimes those go unnoticed in that declutter of when clients leave, just making sure they're part of that workflow. So really just starting, you're going to just start off with a clean slate come January with all the work you're going to put in, in the next couple months here.
Absolutely.
Team training, I think, is really ideal right now, especially, I don't know how many emails you all get daily about the 2025 tax season and planning. And I know we're in extension season. We don't really want to take the time to do that. But I would say divvy it up amongst your team. Everybody doesn't have to be the expert on everything. So have one person do this one, have one person do this one, whatever is the most important to your firm, whatever those priorities are, and divvy them up. And then have a lunch and learn and have that person again be the expert on what that is and bring that back to the table. So now you've maybe taken 4 or 5 hours of CP and you've condensed it down to an hour for the entire team. I think sometimes that really works. And, we just talked about software. Who on your team is, identify who on your team is struggling maybe with some of their role, their duties that they're, expected to perform, those responsibilities, and offer them some training in the off season, right? I know a lot of CPA firms are going through reviews right now. This is a great time to identify what training needs to be done in order to get a better performance, come 2025 or towards the end of 2024, and really, deep diving into that and making sure you're providing that for the team.
And let's not forget that this is a great leverage opportunity for those of you with remote staff and saying, how do we continue to build connection and community with our firm in the midst of the remote staff? Is, hey, I don't want to skimp on these team training opportunities. We're not just going to send out a video. We're going to meet. We're going to have cameras on, and we're gonna be engaged through that. So certainly a benefit for those of you with remote team members.
And something else that comes to mind that's not on our list or in our PowerPoint is, you know, as a firm, do you do some sort of get together? You know, some client firm, maybe it's just the employee, but start thinking about making sure that that's scheduled and, you know, that's getting out there by year end so that everyone can mark their calendars to attend. And I think, you know, workflow is really important too, especially as you go extension season. So if you didn't do it in tax season, put the bug in everybody's ear that they need to, what's working and not working, because it's a really good time to identify that in extension season. So if you didn't identify it in tax season, you don't have that list to make those changes, make sure you're now doing that for extension season, right? We've got, you know, what, 4 weeks till September 15th, then another 4 till October 15th. So you have plenty enough time to identify those items to make sure that you're going into tax season really clean. Oh, Will, how much do we love this one? Employee contracts, right? It's not something, even more than extension season, I think firm owners don't want to even think about employee contracts, but there's a lot of things that have changed just over the course of the last 9 months, or maybe the last year when you last reviewed, or maybe you've done a huge overhaul and you have a lot of intellectual property that you haven't thought of. So it's really a great time to start rethinking those employee contracts, what needs updated. You know, there's been some big news around those non-compete clauses. So making sure that whatever you have is up to date and is protecting the firm essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that third bullet in there, right? Defining remote work expectations. And just even apart from employee contracts, looking at what are our productivity expectations as well, and making sure we're confident with where those levels are and we have good measurement in place. So
Yeah, it's just something that I don't think we often think about until it's too late. So proactively reviewing those and getting those new updates out. We've kind of alluded to this, but the tax season process, how many, you know,
Julie, you want us to plan in advance?
I know. How many of you have a tax season workflow where someone can go in and identify every single step inside of what happens in the firm with a tax return? And, you know, I think why this is such a good practice is, you know, a couple years ago, we got into a conference room and we used Post-it notes. And Will, I don't know if you were part of this or not. I'm sure I shared it with you, but no one actually knew what everybody else in the firm did. And it was a really interesting aha moment because everyone now understood that their responsibilities and how much they affected, whether it was the middle, the beginning, the end, whatever that was, it was really eye-opening to go, oh my gosh, I had no idea you had to do all of that, because we only see one small portion, right? Or whenever it's completed, or, you know, whatever the case is. And so I would encourage you, if you don't have something like that for every member of your team to see, take an hour, get in a room, get some Post-it notes. It's actually a great bonding experience, but it also provides a lot of aha moments because now people are like, hey, you know what? I went ahead and I checked that box because I had no idea that you had to check all of them. Or I had no idea that writing the phone number down didn't translate to getting put into your practice management self. I had no idea, right? It's just these no idea moments that now are going to create a lot of efficiency on the back end come tax season.
where I think this is especially important, well, it's important, right? Two areas stick out to me. One, what more, how else can the admin team be more informed about expectation of client documents so that when they turn things over to the preparer level, we're really truly tax ready and able to go execute, right? So that's one area of opportunity that we can pull out of those kind of conversations. A second is so many firms now are using a lot of OCR and import items with their tax preparation that a lot of preparers today are really doing what a first level reviewer 10 years ago would do. And what that means is that our reviewers, if we're not updating, hey, why is our review taking so long? Well, if we understand the preparer's OCRing everything and then reviewing what was put in from the W2 and box 1, 3, and 5, does the final reviewer still have to go look at that? Or do we say, look, we had the OCR, plus we already had the review by the preparer of that. Now my reviewing checklist for my final reviewer comes down and slims down a little bit. We get a little bit more efficient as we go. So I think that's another area to kind of take a look at from an efficiency opportunity.
And Will, you used a word that I just think accountants and CPA firm owners love: checklist. I
I
think
know they love it. Don't say think. We know they love it.
I think now is the time to really take a look. If you have existing checklists, just like what you said, is to look at those and say, hey, what has changed? What can we eliminate? What do we need to add? And also then maybe you need to create a whole new checklist, because maybe, like you said, Will, you're implementing the OCR or whatever that change in your tax season process is, you're implementing that in. Now is the time to get those checklists, and then you'll be able to say, ooh, we missed an entire, check box because this also has to happen. But it's, again, just those checks and balances to just really make tax season flow, effectively and efficiently. I think that's really, really what it comes down to.
Let me just drop a couple names in there as well. So there's reportedly, according to self-published social media endeavors, right? So eh, tools like SafeSend and K1X are certainly seeming to take off from a user count and usage perspective. That's what my observational eye tells me. No real data involved here, just anecdotal watching of what's going on. And those are tools that are great, but oftentimes when they're implemented, we implement them just for the people that they impact. And we don't go out and say, well, now that we're using SafeSend for some of our delivery return, that should actually impact something different that the partner review does. And we didn't update that checklist. We only looked at what is admin doing on the delivery side, but there really should be an impact and a cascade in other areas. So that's another thing to kind of watch out for. If you put one of those niche tools in place, or you are putting a niche tool in place, don't just keep your assessment in that niche area. Say, hey, what else might this impact that we can streamline as well and really take advantage of the technology?
Technology, we love and hate it, right? How many of you have established not only internal deadlines, but external deadlines for clients? I mean, I think we all have to start implementing those if you haven't, and start communicating those, because it's, one, important to your team to understand the workload, but two, it's important for the clients to understand what happens if they don't hit the deadline. Last year, for instance, I was so mad at everybody that got K1s. Like, we have, how many tax returns do you have basically done except for the outstanding K1s, right? So simple, so easy. But the clients, they get them 9/15, 9/16, and they're dropping them off on 10/12, 10/13, 10/14. So in my new client expectation, it's $1,000 penalty if you drop your K1s off after 9:30. Because that's not fair to my team, right? And I think just establishing that expectation, because those people don't understand they're one of 300 people that do that, right? And to understand that it's not just them. Like, I have a team working here that is not really willing to work 23 hours a day because you couldn't, get your K1 over to us. So I think it's really important to establish those deadlines, not just internal, but external, and then be able to communicate them effectively. And for me, sometimes it's got to hurt a little, right, Will? It's got, whether that's internal or external, whatever
Yeah,
it is, it's got to hurt a little.
most of the firms I work with do a fairly decent job at communicating cutoff dates. They also do an awful job of actually enforcing the boundaries, your third bullet point there, right? So, hey, we've communicated it's in the client's best interest because the quality should be best when we're not rushed. It's in our best interest for the sanity of our team and ourselves. We need to enforce those boundaries. If we say, hey, we get it after here, you're not going to be filed timely or you're going to be put on extension, hey, do it. That's all right. You communicated the boundary in advance. They understood it. they didn't meet the requirement. Here's the consequence. Like if we never enforce the consequences, then our communications hold no water as we go forward.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, both internally and externally. Gonna try to move fast because I know we only have 5 minutes left, Will, but Q4 priorities. So really start to focus on that proactive tax planning, right? Reviewing and knowing your client and what those year-end checklists look like. What do you have to achieve by the end of the year? And I think this is a great time, to define those roles and those expectations of who's doing what. Could we move any of those responsibilities to the admin level? Do we need to add or implement anything into the accountant CPA level? And really making sure as we move through that, what those goals are, what those expectations are, those deadlines, like we just said, and make sure we're completing, the quote unquote checklist so that we're going into tax season, without any of those hanging over our heads.
Let me drop one other thing on here with the proactive tax planning post October 16th. Every tax planning or projection meeting that you have, I want you to go confirm things that cause a hold up later. Go get validation of, hey, how much tax, if you're not responsible as the firm for paying in tax and they're responsible for doing it themselves with their quarterly estimates, hey, did you actually do that? Can you show me how much you paid? Can you verify that you did X, Y, or Z that we've talked about? I want to take that verification, put it as part of my work paper. So when the preparer goes to pick it up, they don't spend time chasing things the client's already verified for us, or at least the amount. Yeah, I did 3 quarterly estimated payments. Here they are. Here's the check numbers. Great. Now, when the preparer goes to pick it up, they're only looking for that estimated payment in January or whatever it may be, right? So I just want to use and leverage that time well for things that cause kind of chasing our tail during prep time.
Which leads me to this just corporate and personal tax planning strategy. It's exactly what you just said. Create some sort of checklist to know exactly what you've evaluated, what you've implemented, and maybe that expectation, like the client had to do X and the firm had to do Y, and what exactly those are, and documenting them, because we all know that sometimes they say, well, we didn't do that. And when you can have that, provide that evidence of exactly what happened, we're extremely transparent. So we provide the checklist that is internal for us to the clients. So they know exactly what's expected of us and what's expected of them. It's kind of like a written plan almost. So I would encourage you, to create something like that. It's like a two for one deal almost.
Yeah.
And then, Will, we've got our year-end checklist, right? We're there already.
Yeah.
So, we said just cleaning up everything. A lot of us have those maintenance clients, right? So are we on par? Did we hit our marks? What does that even look like? Just gathering, like you said, documentation, providing those checklists. All those W-9 forms are in the software, so that your firm, if you're preparing those 1099s, it's a really easy thing to do and you're not chasing those. Start that process. Make sure you have some sort of process for that. Will, what can you add?
I feel like we beat this
I
up
know.
quite a bit.
I
So
know. So prepare, organize. We don't want any friction, right?
no, frictionless. I sound like I'm a fancy business person now because I use the word frictionless presentation. So
We're happy to answer any questions. This is our thing.
yeah, connect with us. You want to get deeper on any of these things, happy to have that conversation. But Gary, 30 minutes flew by, just like Q4 is going to fly by.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. There was one question, and it was, is the PowerPoint available or the slide deck available? Can you drop that in the chat, or is it too big?
I can figure that out, I think. I know
See
the
if you-
PowerPoint's too big. I think the PDF version might be better suited.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. And either way, we'll also get that attached to the follow-up email that'll come out. So you'll have that too if it doesn't go through the chat. So if you guys could make sure I have that PDF, that'd be great. If you could email that to me. And I'm going to share my screen real quickly as we wrap up here. I did drop 2 items into the chat. Actually, before I do that, I took a lot of notes, and it's so funny because as we shared in the green room, we were at ZeroCon last week, my business partner and I, and had a lot of conversations. And like each one of your bullet points there, each one of your main slide topics are things that, while we're not a firm, but they're all things that we need to be doing as a business. And we have people everywhere. We're all remote. Nobody's under the same roof. It's a little bit harder to do a post-it note exercise, but at a minimum, he and I do need to get into a room and do a post-it note exercise because you don't those workflows are so critical. And when they don't work, they don't flow, right? And next thing you know, everything is sitting on my desk, unfortunately, and I have to deal with it. So what we want to do is prepare so we don't have to do that, right? And delegate so somebody else can do all those things so that we can be doing what we should be doing. So, but
Hey, Gary,
so
we got
real,
the PDF.
yeah.
We got the PDF in the chat, but it only went to hosts. We couldn't send it to all the attendees. So
Okay,
if you
let
want to drop
me
that to the attendees there,
Here, let
you
me
guys,
see.
do
you guys
that.
will get it. So
Yeah, yeah, we'll send it out immediately. So let me just share this real quick. So I dropped two links into the chat. One was about our premium content program. It's on this screen up here, so I'm looking up there. And so basically, we have 9 training tracks that I mentioned. So we have an app comparison track, marketing, tech stack, your firm accelerated, which is about business development, tax practice, migrations, big talk right now, desktop to whatever you're going to, depending on what Intuit's doing, human resources, coach's corner, and then practical automations. And then the second link that I dropped in was our Future Forward Summit, which is a 2-day, eight, I think we're going to have actually 9 sessions, but 8 of them are CPE sessions, September the 24th and 25th. Those links will also be in the follow-up as well. So we'll get those 2 links as well as the slide deck in the follow-up. So there you go. Will, Julie, thank you both so much. And if anybody wants to stay around, I am going to add that PowerPoint into the chat, but I wanted to go ahead and get everything cleared before I took a minute to do that. So Will, Julie, again, thank you so much. Don't forget, Labor Day is like 10 days away. So mark your calendar and start preparing for Q4 and 2025. Woo. Just don't even want to think about that yet. So, but again, thank you both and thank you all. And I will be adding this momentarily.
thank you.
All right, you should have that. So a few people here, but we'll also, like I said, we will have this sent out to you. And 2 links not showing up in the chat. Are you still here? All right, we'll add those links as well to the follow-up. Thank you all.